Okay then, so today I'm going to be showing you how to set up the latest release of Emu Deck for Windows, which is of course now absolutely free, and it has been since December 2023. So I'm going to be showing you the entire process of this, how to actually set it up, how to install it, how to add some games and some BIOS files. I'm also going to be showing you some other things such as installing your own theme. So there's a lot to learn in this very awesome latest release of Emu Deck for Windows. Check this one out. Okay, before I start today's Emu Deck for Windows setup guide, if you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content. That just means you'll get notified every time I release a new setup guide like this one today, and it also helps my channel a lot too. So what is Emu Deck and what is Emu Deck for Windows? So obviously Emu Deck was released for the Steam Deck, which is very awesome. And it was also released for Emu Deck for Windows. So originally this was a Patreon subscription, but in December when I last covered this, it was actually free, just like it is today. So let's get on with this. What we need first is Steam. Steam is crucial in order to run Emu Deck for Windows, and of course Steam is free. So all you need to do to get Steam is just head over to the Steam website, and I'll leave the link in my description, but it's pretty easy to find, and just install Steam. It will ask you for a username, a password, and an email you confirmation, but Steam's a good app anyway for PC gaming. I use it a lot. So next thing we're going to need is Emu Deck itself. So again, link's going to be in my description, and there are some very awesome new features and upgrades to this latest release of Emu Deck, which came out less than 24 hours ago. So we got new GUI, new graphical user interface that is, but sadly Yuzu and Citra are no longer supported with this, but that doesn't stop the fun. So what we're going to do then is go to downloads, and as we can see here, Emu Deck is available for many different platforms, but we're going for Windows today. So if I just left click, and just a very quick disclaimer, it says some antivirus might flag as a Trojan. It's a false positive, so don't worry about it. And after all, Emu Deck is a very trusted piece of software. And it also says don't use Edge to download this. So I'm using Google Chrome for this, so I'm going to just download beta. In this is now going to download a .cmd. So if I just left click on this, it's going to bring up a command terminal. Don't worry too much about this. It's really not as hard as it looks. Okay, so we're going to see slow DNS detected. Do you want us to change them for faster ones? I'm going to just put no for this. Windows Store, make sure you have the app in store. So if I just press continue on this, that's going to bring us over to the Microsoft Store. Now I've actually already got this installed because I've used Emu Deck in the past. What you need to do is just make sure it's on your computer and it's installed. So once you've done that, just close down the Microsoft Store. And I'm pressing enter on my keyboard just to bypass that. Next up, I've got Update Windows Package Manager. So if you don't have this installed, then it will likely ask you to install it. If you do have it, just go to Update. So we're now downloading Emu Deck, as you can see the progress. Notification pop up on your screen, it will say Git for Windows, just press yes on this. And we're just going to wait patiently for this to extract. And that's it, we're now starting Emu Deck, so it really isn't that bad. So every time you open up Emu Deck, you will see this window pop up with a character from Super Mario World. And this is it, so we're pretty much in. Okay, so before you come to the window, I can see now it's going to ask you for an easy or a custom setup. Now, for beginners, I personally suggest doing the easy setup. And once you've set all that up and you've downloaded all your emulators, and of course RetroArch automatically, you'll end up with this screen as I can see. So first of all, let me just give you a little guide. So if we go to quick settings just here, we can configure our settings from here to use within Emu Deck, that's EmulationStation. So we got everything here from using autosaves to enabling bezels, and there's lots there to take a look at. And if we just drop down to manage emulators, because I installed Emu Deck using the easy way during the initial setup, I've got all the emulators here ready to go, and there's a lot here, including RetroArch. What we can actually do here is update things. For example, if I go to say DuckStation, I can then get information on, for example, BIOS missing. So it's actually going to tell us here which BIOS files we need, or it's going to prompt us that particular BIOS files are missing. And again, if I go to manage emulators and go to RetroArch, I can see many things here in RetroArch. So for example, it's telling me that BIOS files needed are PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, Sega Dreamcast, Sega Mega CD, and also Nintendo DS. So manage emulators, you can gain a lot from that and understand why things aren't working. Now if we just use a slide and just drag this around halfway down, we'll have a section here called Retro Achievements. If you've not heard of Retro Achievements, it's pretty much a free app which earns us points for playing particular retro games. So I'll leave the link in my description for that, but like I say, it's free. All you need to do is sign up with the website and enter your username and password into this section here. And let me just remind you, if you ever mess up any settings and you just want it to go back to default, you've got a couple of resets just here. We've got a quick reset and custom reset. So what we need to do next is actually add this into Steam. Unless we do that, we can't actually open up the program. So what we're going to do is just go to Steam ROM Manager. And let me give you a little bit of a heads up. If you find that Steam ROM Manager isn't loading up, then just check under Manage Emulators. And from here, you can manually install it in case the setup process didn't work correctly. So if we just scroll down, we're going to find Steam ROM Manager here, and then I can install it. And we're going to close that down. And now if I go back to Steam ROM Manager, okay, cool, so we're in. So this is what we're going to see in Steam ROM Manager. It looks a little bit confusing, but what this allows us to do is actually put things into our Steam library so we've got easier access to it. So if I choose everything here by leaving toggle parsers enabled, everything's going to transfer into my Steam library. If I toggle parsers off, then I can manually choose what I want sent over to Steam. So if I just left click on EmulationStation, and I then go down to Add Games, I'm going to press Parse, and here we go. So I'm also going to save to Steam. Done add and remove entries. So if I just minimize this and open up Steam, and if you've never used Steam before, then we're just going to go over to Library, and we'll find EmulationStation just here, and this is what we just parsed using Emu Deck. So to open this, I'm going to just press play on it. Okay, so first thing you're likely going to see is this: no games were found. So what I'm going to do right now is go to create directories by right pressing my D-pad and press A on that, and proceed, and OK. And if I just quit out of this, I've then just told it to create me a directory where we can add ROMs and BIOS files. So to find this, if I just go to this PC, in my C drive, I'm going to find an emulation folder. And in here, this is where we can then start adding our games and our BIOS files. For example, if I go into ROMs, I've got everything listed here supported by Emu Deck and EmulationStation, from the 3DO right down to the ZX Spectrum. So for this setup guide, I'm going to be using a Sega Mega Drive game or a Sega Genesis game. So what I need to do is go to my ROMs Mega Drive folder, and I'm going to just drag in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And I'm also going to be doing for this setup guide, something a bit more advanced but not too difficult, is a PlayStation 1 game. So within that emulation ROMs folder, I'm going to look for PSX, and here's PSX. So I'm going to drag my PlayStation game inside of here. Now obviously PlayStation 1 needs BIOS files to operate, so I've got my BIOS folder just here, and I'm going to just drag and drop my PS1 BIOS inside of that folder. Now like I say, Yuzu is no longer operational, so what we're going to do now to open this up again is just go back to Steam and play. And here we go, so we're now inside. So as we can see, we got Sega Mega Drive. If I press A to go inside here, I've got my Sonic the Hedgehog 2 game. And if I press B on my controller to come out and go into PlayStation, I've got my PlayStation game just here. So what can we do with this? We can actually customize how it looks. If I press start on my controller, main menu. If I go down to UI settings by pressing D-pad down, theme downloader by pressing A, proceed, and this is going to gather a themes list. And just here we got a massive array of different themes. So lots there to choose from. So I'm actually going to show you how to do this, and I'm going to just download Showcase. So if I press A on this, it will there say downloading theme. And if I press B to come out and go down to theme, in here I'm going to find my Showcase theme I've just downloaded. So press A and then press B to come out. And here we go, we now got a really nice theme. Other things we can do in main menu is, of course, we need to set up scrapers. So my games right now don't have no artwork for them, but we can change this by going to scraper, press A, and scrape these games. I'm going to just select all games for this. Under scrape these systems, I'm going to just make sure Sega Mega Drive and Sony PlayStation are checked and press back. Now under account settings, you actually need to sign up with Screen Scraper so you can actually download artwork in preview videos. So Screen Scraper is absolutely free. Again, just like Retro Achievements, it's just a case of signing up and getting a username and password. So I'm going to just pop mine in. And once we're done putting username and password in, just press back. And if we go to content settings, we can actually select what type of artwork we want to download using Screen Scraper. So I'm going to select everything here. Just remember, if you don't have much hard drive space, then a lot of this here is going to take up a lot of space. So just be careful what you're actually downloading. If I go to back and start, it's going to then start scraping our artwork. So eventually, once that's been scraped, it's going to say 2 games successfully scraped in my situation. So I'm going to press OK to come out. And if I go back into one of my games, okay, so everything's working fine. Lastly, what I'm going to suggest doing is, if you don't have the correct emulator or core setup to run these games, your game is going to bounce back on you. So in this case, from main menu, if we go down to other settings, alternative emulators. Now, Mega Drive Genesis plus GX is selected as default. This is going to be running through RetroArch. So if I open up my Mega Drive game, And to exit this, I'm going to enter the RetroArch quick menu by pressing my Google Stadia button. If you're using an Xbox controller, it'll be your Xbox button. PlayStation controllers will be PS button. We can do a lot through RetroArch quick menu, such as save states. So if I go to save states, I can then save where I am in the game. And if I enter back into that RetroArch quick menu again and go to load state, boom. And we can also change the overlay. So if you notice on the side, we got the Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis sides rather than having the black sides. If you want to change this in the quick menu, if we go down to on-screen overlay, it's currently on. If I turn this off and go back into the game, quick menu, resume. So for now, I'm going to just exit out of this altogether. So again, doing this through RetroArch quick menu, and I'm going to go to quit. Okay, so in today's setup guide, I'm going to be showing you how to get started with the latest version of EmulationStation, or it's better known as ESDE nowadays. This is currently 3.0.0. So in this setup guide, I'm going to be showing you how to download this, how to actually use RetroArch within inside of this system, how to scrape artwork, how to configure controllers, and I'm going to get you all the settings you need in order to get retro gaming immediately. So check this one out. Okay then, before I start today's EmulationStation 3.0.0 setup guide, make sure to hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss out on upcoming retro emulation content that I release every day on my channel. It helps my channel a great deal, plus you get up-to-date retro emulation setup guides as I release them, which is once, maybe 3 times a day. So this is the first in 2024 that EmulationStation desktop edition has received an update, and I actually did a full setup guide last year in December. So what we're going to do today then is give you a full setup guide to this and get you up and running. We're going to be downloading RetroArch to use with this. I'm going to be showing you how to use BIOS files, how to add your games, and I'm going to be generally showing you how to get up and running with this. So let's get into this. What we're going to do is head over to the ESDE website, and we can check just here that this latest version was released less than 24 hours ago, and we got a changelog just here, which is going to tell you what new improvements and bug fixes we have got in this latest version of ESDE. And there's a lot there, including a brand new theme. So what we're going to do then is just download this from the website itself. If we just go to download, now we got various different installations just here. We can actually support the team, or we can just get it for free. We got 2 options for Windows. We've either got the portable version, or we can actually install this to hard drive. And it also supports Mac computers as well as Linux, as you can see just here. Awesome stuff. I'm going to download the portable version for this today. So we're going to let this download as it's just done, and like I say, we're going to use RetroArch with this. If you're new to front-end emulation, the majority of front-end systems uses RetroArch because RetroArch covers so much. RetroArch is going to run in the background of ESDE, and it's going to power our games. So we're going to go to the website here and we're going to download it. If we just scroll down, we are going to download the latest version of RetroArch to go with this. And in fact, this RetroArch system actually received a full update the other day too. Lots of updates going on for front ends at the moment, that type of thing. So we got a choice of the installer version, or we've also got a portable version. So for installation versions, we got 64-bit and 32-bit. For portable versions, we got 64-bit and 32-bit. If you're confused over which bit to use, then the simplest way to do this is go to your search bar and type in system information. Once system information is popped up, you're going to find under system type what type of computer you've got. Mine's times 64, so I need to download the 64-bit version. If you've got an old school 32-bit computer, which is quite unlikely of this day and age, then it will likely say times 86. So I'm going to download the portable 64-bit. Awesome stuff. So that's now downloading. And finally, I'm going to introduce you to Screen Scraper. If you've not come across Screen Scraper, so once we're inside of EmulationStation, or simply ESDE as the dev team are calling it these days, we can actually scrape our artwork using this, but we need to sign up for free. So simply go to register. And once you've signed up and you've got a username and you've got a password, you can then use that inside the front end of ESDE itself. Very simple stuff. Okay, so we've downloaded ESDE itself, the portable version, as we can see, and we've also downloaded the portable version of RetroArch. What we need to do is extract both of these. So I'm going to start off with ESDE. If I double left click, here we go. This is what you're going to find inside. And that's great. That's what we need. So we're just going to extract this, and I'm going to put this onto my desktop. Just drag it out. Okay, cool. So once that's extracted, what we're going to do is just delete the zip folder just here. So just delete it, move it to your recycle bin or trash, whatever. Next thing we need to extract is the RetroArch portable version. So again, what we're going to do is just simply drag it or extract it onto the desktop. Okay, and once that's finished extracting, again, we can now delete the zip archive or zip folder of RetroArch. So first thing we need to do is just go into the ESDE folder. From here, we're going to find a few different subfolders, and really it's the emulators and the ROMs folder that we need to focus on. If I go inside the emulators, what I'm going to do from here is just drag and drop my RetroArch portable inside of this emulators folder. Okay, cool. So let's actually open up esde.exe. This is an executable, and this is going to take you into the program. Okay, so once we're inside, what I'm going to do is just use either my controller. I'm using a Google Stadia controller, or we can use keys on the keyboard such as right and left. I'm going to go to create directories and press enter. And I'm going to press enter on proceed and OK. And then I'm going to just go to quit and press enter on quit. Okay, so that's going to quit out, and what we're going to do next is go into ROMs. Now what we've just done through ESDE is generated lots of folders in here. So this is going to be all the systems that ESDE supports. And you've got everything here from the Nintendo NES, ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64, pretty much all of those 8-bit, 16-bit, 32-bit, even 64-bit systems. So what I've got for this example is I've got a couple of Sega Mega CD games, which is Lawnmower Man and Mickey Mania. So in this ROMs list, what we need to do is find a folder named Sega CD. And the reason I'm going to be using Sega CD is partly because we need BIOS files in order to run Sega CD games, which I'm going to be showing you shortly. But what we're going to do is just drag and drop my two Sega CD games inside of that ROM Sega CD folder. If I come out, next up I've got two more games. So one of my games is going to be a Sega Mega Drive game, so we need to find the Mega Drive folder, and here it is. And I'm going to drag and drop my Mega Drive game in here. And finally, we have got a NES game. So again, what we're going to do is just scroll down until we find NES and drag and drop. Okay, if we just come out and out again, what we need to do next is take a look at RetroArch. So if we go into emulators, where we dragged and dropped RetroArch earlier in this video, what we're going to do is open up RetroArch, and we need to set some things up inside RetroArch. Okay, so if you're new to RetroArch, what this is going to be running from something called cores, and you can look at cores like they're mini emulators that run exclusively with RetroArch. So I've got 3 systems to emulate using RetroArch. I need to download the cores to power them. So to do this, what we're going to do inside of RetroArch is use D-pad to go down, or you can use cursors on your keyboard. Just simply go to Online Updater, and from here, we're going to go to Core Downloader. Now, this is the entirety of different cores, or emulators if you like, what RetroArch supports, what it's got, what we can emulate through RetroArch. So we obviously need a Sega CD core. So what we're going to do is just scroll down until we get to that section. So under Sega, we got many different cores here to use. And the one I'm going to be using is going to be Genesis plus GX. Now you can find MS, GG, MD, CD, which all work with Genesis plus GX. So Genesis plus GX can emulate Master System, Game Gear, Mega Drive, and Sega CD. We've also got Pick a Drive, which is another very good Sega emulator, but for this I'm going to just use Genesis plus. If I want to download and install this, I need to press my A button, and it's going to give us a hashtag which tells us that it's installed. So next up, we got a Nintendo NES game. And again, we just need to look for a Nintendo NES core. And let me remind you, core is an emulator, almost. So for this, we got Nintendo NES cores just there. So I'm going to download the core, Nestopia UE. Again, press A. And that's now installed. As we can see, it says core installed and we got a hashtag. And that's it. We don't need anything else because we downloaded that Sega CD core, which is going to emulate Sega CD and my Mega Drive game. Now, if I press B to come out, what we need to do next is make RetroArch into a full screen. As you can see, it's opened up in a window mode. If we go down one to settings, go across and go down to video. From here, we're going to go down to full screen mode, press A, and just simply start in full screen mode, so A. Okay, so we're now in full screen mode. What we're going to do next is just come out, and we're going to go down to configuration file, which you can find under main menu, and save current configuration. If I press B to come out, we're going to go down to quit. Okay, so that's RetroArch partly sorted. So now we've got the emulators or core sorted to work alongside ESDE. What we're going to do is open up ESDE again. Okay, awesome. So we can now see that our games have been detected. So we got the Nintendo NES game, we got Sega CD, and we got Sega Mega Drive. What we need to do then is take a look inside each one of these folders. So here's my NES game, my two Sega CD games, and my Sega Mega Drive game. So first of all, let's actually download some art. So earlier I was talking about Screen Scraper. What we're going to do to scrape artwork for these games is just simply press Start button to come into main menu, Scraper, Scrape From, Screen Scraper needs to be selected here. Scrape these games, and I'm going to make sure all games are selected. Scrape these systems, so this is each one of my systems that I'm running through EmulationStation. So just check each one of these and press back. Now under account settings, this is why you need to sign up and register with Screen Scraper. We need to put our Screen Scraper username and password here. Once you've done that, press back, and content settings. So just here, we got a selection of what we want to download through Screen Scraper. So we got preview videos and all sorts of different artwork. So if we go on to use different themes, which I'm going to show shortly in ESDE, then different artwork is going to display differently on different themes. Well, we're going to go on to that. I'm going to go to back and then start. And depending on how many games you're importing into ESDE, this can take from a couple of minutes up to a few hours. Okay then, so 4 games successfully scraped. I'm going to press A on my controller. And that's it. So let's take a look at opening up the games. I'm going to start with Sega Mega Drive. And here's my artwork. If I press A to launch the game. Sega! And as you can see, we're in. Okay, so we've got Mega Drive up and running, and what I'm going to do is press my Google Stadia button. Now, if you're going to be using something like an Xbox controller to open up what's called the RetroArch quick menu, it's going to likely be your Xbox button. But from here, we can do a lot of different things, including save state games. So if I just go to save states and select save state, and to load that state back up, just by pressing my Google Stadia button again, I'm going to go to load state. Very cool. So I can come out of save states by pressing B on my controller, and we can do things further with RetroArch, which is obviously powering this with the core we downloaded. If I go to core options, and I go down to video, core provided aspect ratio is on auto. I can change this here by going to 4:3, and if I keep pressing B and go back to quick menu by pressing A and A again, and as you can see, it now looks a lot more like how it should look with that 4:3 aspect ratio we applied. You can do a lot of stuff through RetroArch quick menu, but I'm not going to go into that for now. What I'm going to do is actually quit out of this. So to exit out of my Mega Drive game, I need to be in quick menu for this. And from here, I can go to quit. And if I press B to come out of Mega Drive, what I'm going to do next is go into my Nintendo folder, and here we go, more artwork. And just press A to boot up your game. And as you can see, couldn't find emulator core. So what we need to do in this case is go to main menu by pressing start or the equivalent of start on your controller. If we go down to other settings, alternative emulators. Now I'm going to go to NES. And I downloaded a core for this earlier, which was in RetroArch. And the core I downloaded was Netopia. So I'm going to select that. And try and open my game again. And we're in. And again, just like the game I did before for Mega Drive, if we go into quick menu, save states, and we can save this just here. And load. Cool, so we also got the same video settings for Nintendo NES, just like any other system. We can go to core options, video. You'll find lots of different options here for Nintendo NES, so we can go down to preferred aspect ratio, and again, just like Mega Drive, pop this on to 4:3, and if we come out, quick menu, resume. Okay, so what we're going to do then is quit out of this game. And finally, we got Sega CD. If we go in here, now Sega CD isn't going to run because we've put no BIOS files into the folder. So what we're going to do is exit out of EmulationStation. So main menu, quit ESDE, really quit, yes. Okay, and from here, what we're going to do is just show you where to put your BIOS files. So if we go inside emulators and back into the RetroArch folder, because we're powering these games through RetroArch, we're going to need to use the RetroArch folder. So system is where your BIOS files are going to live. So I've got Sega CD BIOS files here. If I just drag and drop them into that system folder, and if I then go back into the application, ESDE, Sega CD, and I'm going to open up Mickey Mania again.
Steamboat Willie. You look awfully familiar.
So same story with the RetroArch quick menu, we can use save states. And let me just let you into a tip, we got different state slots here to use. We got 1,000 in total. If I use a different state slot, say number 2, save state. And I'm going to go to load state. And as we can see there in the bottom left hand corner, it's saved from slot 2. So what we're going to do then is just come out of RetroArch. And we're going to look at themes. So if we press main menu, what we're going to do is go to UI settings. And from here, we're going to go to theme downloader and proceed. This is going to gather up a list of different themes we can download. So we got a lot here. So lots there to choose from, and one I particularly like is the CoinOps theme. So to download this, I'm going to press A on my controller. Okay, so once this say installed, what we're going to do is press B on controller to come out, and we're going to go to theme. And just here you'll find a new theme just here which has appeared. It wasn't there a minute ago. This is CoinOps, which I've just downloaded. If I press A on this, and then I need to press B to come out. And as you can see, we now got awesome new theme. And if we actually go into the game folders,
Get ready.
and as you can see, everything's changed. And when we downloaded the artwork, when we scraped it, we scraped lots of different pieces of art because those different pieces of art are going to display in particular themes. So let's say, for example, your controller isn't working how it should be. Press start to go to main menu. From here, we're going to go to input device settings. Controller type, we can use a selection here. This is just using Xbox by default. And if we just scroll down, configure keyboard and controllers. So what this is going to do is give us the ability to map out our controller. If I press proceed, one gamepad detected, so that's the one I've been using for this setup guide. What I need to do here is hold down the button on my controller. And then what we're going to do is just do what it says. So D-pad up, I'm going to press my D-pad up, D-pad down, left, right, and this is all you do to correctly set up your controller. And should you need to bypass one of these if you don't have enough buttons, if you just hold down a button on your controller for a couple of seconds, it will say not defined and it just skips it. Okay, so next what we're going to do is show you how to use cheats for this. So simply what we're going to do is just open up a game. Okay, once we're inside our game, what we're going to do is press B on the controller to come out, and from here we're going to go down to Online Updater using the D-pad, press A to enter. And from here what we're going to do is just scroll down and update cheats. Just let this download. And we're also going to download overlays. So what we're going to do whilst we're in the game is actually show you how to apply cheats to particular games, and I've also downloaded overlays. So whilst we're in the game, we can actually have some on the sides rather than those boring black bars. So just let this extract. I'm also going to go down to update slang shader, so just press A to download this too. Okay, so after everything's finished downloading and extracting, what we're going to do is just come out by pressing B. We're going to go to quick menu and just scroll down until we find cheats. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply a cheat to Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which I've just booted up. So we're going to go down to apply after toggle and just turn this one on. And then I'm going to go to load cheat file replace, press A. Now I'm going to scroll down until I come across Sega Mega Drive Genesis, and here we go. And in here, you've just downloaded and extracted cheats for pretty much every Mega Drive game. So if I just scroll down, everything's listed in alphabetical order, and I'm obviously looking for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. And here we go, Sonic 3 Europe.cht. If I press A, and I'm then going to scroll down, and for this particular game what I've got is a cheat here, Untouchable Sonic and Tails. If I go in here, I'm going to press A on enabled, and if I come out by pressing B, I'm then going to go to apply changes. Cool, and then come out by pressing B, quick menu, resume. And as you can see now, that cheat has actually taken effect. I'm actually standing on top of those spikes and it's not hurting me. If I come out and go down to quit, I can then use those cheats I've just downloaded extracted on any system or virtually any system. So from quick menu, again, we're going to go down to cheats, and we're going to make sure apply after toggle is actually turned on, and we're going to go to load cheat file, and then it's just a case of scrolling down until we find Nintendo Entertainment System, which is here. Now again, just like Mega Drive, you've got all these cheats for pretty much all the Nintendo NES games. So again, we're going to look for the game, which is Super Mario Brothers. So I'm going to select Super Mario Brothers, and if I scroll down, we then got even more cheats than what Sonic 3 just had. So for example, get a coin to pass to the next world. And as you can see from that gameplay, the settings for the cheats have now been applied. So something else I downloaded just now was overlays. So let's check this out. If I just go down to on-screen overlay, I'm going to turn this on. Overlay preset. I'm going to go down to borders. And I'm going to select NES SMB2 Integer. If I select this one and come back out, quick menu, resume. As you can see, that's randomly applied to Super Mario Bros. 2 NES overlay on the sides. Let's actually get some a bit more accurate. So on-screen overlay, overlay preset, NES and in border. So NES border, turn this on, quick menu, resume. And as you can see from that, we've now got nest borders covering the black bars, which is a lot nicer to look at. Just remember, whenever you're doing these settings, go to configuration file and save current configuration. Okay, we've now officially got a release of Retrobat version 6, and in this setup guide I'm going to show you everything you need to know, so check this one out. Okay, then we now have Retrobat version 6 stable. It's literally just been released as I'm recording this video. And of course, I've covered Retrobat for a very long time now. I've got a whole playlist on Retrobat. So I'm going to do a full setup guide for the latest version of Retrobat version 6. Before I start this setup guide, make sure to hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content. It really helps my channel out a great deal, plus it gets you up-to-date retro emulation as I release it. So we're going to head over to the Retrobat website, and everything's all snazzy and new right now. We got purple going on. Now if we just go to download Retrobat, as we can see here, latest release is version 6.0. We're going to download this from itch.io. And we're going to download just here. And if you feel like donating to the developers behind Retro, you can donate $5 minimum is what they suggest. If you can't afford it, then you can just go to no thanks, just take me to the downloads. And we're going to download stable Windows 64 setup.exe. Now, if you're already running version 6, beta 3, beta 2, or the first beta of version 6, or even if you're still running version 5, I'm going to show you in a minute how to update it so you don't need to go through this full installation process. So this one's going to take a little bit of time, maybe a couple of minutes downloads. There's a lot in this package, as we can see. This one's weighing it in just over 1 gigabyte. Okay, once you've downloaded this, you're going to end up with an exe. If you just double left click, and Windows protected your PC, so if you're using Windows 11 from time to time, you will get these pop up. Just go to more info and run this anyway. And the first part of this installation is choosing your language. Now obviously I'm going to choose English, but you've got a variety just here of different languages to select. English for me, and press OK. And here we go, welcome to Retrobat Setup Wizard, Retrobat version 6. I'm going to go to next. And we got a license agreement just here, so if you feel like reading this for an hour or whatever, then feel free. I'm going to accept the agreement and go to next. And again, I'm going to press next. Now the next option we got here is where you want Retrobat to install to. Now by default, this is going to go into my C drive, and it's going to create a new folder in there called Retrobat, but I'm going to show you around this in a minute once we got this set up. I'm then going to go to next. And we also want to create a desktop shortcut, so we don't have to go in C drive every time to open this up. So create a shortcut, and next, and finally install. Now this next part is absolutely crucial, Microsoft DirectX. Some of you might see, do you want this app to make changes to your device? Now remember, Retrobat requires DirectX as well as Visual C++, which I'm going to go through in a minute. We press yes on this. Okay, so we're just going to let this install, and just be mindful if you're running a lower end potato type computer, this can take a substantial amount of time. Just bear in mind that this is now installing and extracting RetroArch itself, because Retrobat runs mainly from RetroArch in the background. RetroArch is essentially the skeleton behind it. If you're new to Retrobat, then you also can download emulators through Retrobat itself. And in some cases with particular systems, we do need to go external outside of Retrobat to download emulators. But like I say, I've covered most of this at this point in my video. Nintendo Switch Yuzu emulator, for example. So we're just going to let this extract and do what it's doing. Okay, and we are now completely set up. Now, before I go into Retrobat and show you anything else, I'm going to just press finish. Next thing you need to be aware of is that if you don't have Visual C++ installed, Retrobat isn't going to work correctly. So I'm going to take you to a website now, and I'll leave the link in my description for this. So right here we have Visual C++ redistributable runtimes all in one, and this is what you need to download. Now I've already got this installed, but I'm going to go through the process with you. So if we just download using this little tab just here, and I'm going to use a server which is going to be Tech Power. So that's now downloaded, and once you've downloaded Visual C++, the best thing to do with this is create a new folder on your desktop, new folder, and we're just going to leave this as new folder. You don't have to name this because we're going to be deleting it soon. Now, those files, these X's, and we've also got a .bat in that Visual C++, we're going to just drag those into that new folder I've just created. And what we're going to do next is go into that folder, and the one you need to double left click on is the top one. It says install _all.bat. Just double left click. Windows protected your PC. More info, run anyway. Every now and again during this, you're going to find little pop-ups potentially come up on your computer screen. So, do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? Yes. Okay, so after a couple of minutes of continuously pressing yes on those pop-ups, Visual C++ is now installed on your computer. So we can now delete that new folder. We no longer need any of those .x's or that .bat, just delete them. And we also want to delete the setup.exe. We no longer need that because Retrobat is now installed onto our system. Now, what I normally do with my setup guides for Retrobat is just give you a little tour around the structure of it. So, like we know, it installed to C drive and it created a new folder in C drive, Retrobat. So the easiest way to get to this is by right clicking on your shortcut, open file location, and this is going to take you straight into Retrobat where everything's installed. So first thing I'm going to show you is batgui.exe. If we double left click on this one, okay, so on opening BatGUI, it's now called the new BatGUI, and things are looking very different from here. So literally, this is the first time I've opened this up. So we've got different manufacturers down on the side, so this is going to be referencing all the systems that Retrobat covers. Now, if we go on a couple of these tabs, such as obviously this is an update in process eventually. We also got BIOS checker. To my knowledge, this is a new feature for BatGUI. Coming soon, but that could be very interesting. It's likely that's going to scan for our BIOS files or the missing BIOS files that we need to power particular systems such as Sega CD. Configuration. Okay, so configuration is just going to tell us where the Retrobat path is. We also got changelog. So under changelog, we got some new changes just here to appear in BatGUI. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to leave BatGUI and I'm going to cover that once new updates have been applied to that. So let's take a look at different folders. So we got BIOS folder just here. Now, predominantly your BIOS files for systems such as Sega Saturn, PlayStation 1, and other systems such as PC Engine CD, most of the time your BIOS files goes into this folder loosely. There are exceptions of other systems which has its own dedicated folders, but I'm not going to get into that now. Now, if we go to the cheats folder, we can actually use retroarch to download cheats. and your cheats will end up in this folder. And again, I've already done a setup guide on how to get cheats using RetroArch through Retrobat, so that's interesting to watch if you're into cheats in games. Now, EmulationStation is quite a good folder to use, and again, I've covered different setup guides to enhance Retrobat and do this and that using this folder. Normally, if you go to the .EmulationStation folder, things like themes, you can put in EmulationStation themes into this folder. We've also got a music folder, which we can actually put our own tracks in there. So rather than having the standard default background music in the front end Retrobat itself, you can actually put your own music in here. But like I say, I've covered that. So if you want to check that out, that's in my playlist. And we also got video. So when we boot up Retrobat for the first time, we got 4 videos here. So each time you boot it up, you'll likely get one of these. However, you can create your own custom videos as a boot sequence. And if we come back out and out again, and most importantly here, we got ROMs folder. Now, each one of these folders represents each system that Retrobat version 6 is going to cover. So it's literally a simple case of going into each folder and dragging and dropping your games. Now, for systems like PS3 or PCS3 emulation, then it's not as simple as just dragging your games in. But I've done various setup guides, and something like TechnoParrot, there's a lot more to it than just simply dragging your games into folders. But like I say, check out my Retrobat playlist. And here we go then. So let's just open up Retrobat version 6 for the first time. Okay, so here it is, Retrobat version 6, and if you're wondering how to disable front-end music, you've seen how I just done it. Just go to sound settings in main menu when I'm pressing my start button to do this, and then just simply pressing A is going to deselect front-end music. So what have we got here then? So if we go inside of ports, we got a few games, which is normally the case with Retrobat releases. We got a port of what looks like to be Bomberman, we've got a Minecraft port of some kind, and we also got a very cool Rick Dangerous port just here. If we go to arcades, we got no entries found. Into favorites, this is obviously where we can add our favorites for our game collection, so that will end up in your favorites folder. Under light gun, there's nothing in there. Now let me tell you something how the light gun section works. Whatever games you upload, or rather put into your main folder or arcades folder within Retrobat, Retrobat cleverly adds them into the light gun folder. So let's take a look at the main menu itself. So normally the process of downloading new themes for Retrobat is by opening up main menu, and from here we can go to updates and downloads and themes. Now you'll get a selection of themes pop up just here. Now there's one particular theme, which is the top one I'm actually on, a Touch of Glass. In the past, this one's actually been a bit of a problem to download using Retrobat. And if you remember just a minute ago, I actually showed you a folder where you can actually put EmulationStation themes. So if I press on this one to download, we're going to check out if this one downloads now. And install. Okay, so we're going to leave that one going, and obviously we got plenty more themes to download in here. So plenty of themes in there to download. Now, if we go to Content Downloader, and again, I'm pressing A on my controller to enter these. Under Content Downloader, we got many retro homebrew games, and we've even got randomly a Sonic Lost World 3DS demo. So there's plenty here to get you started with, including a free port or shareware version of Doom. We also got Volgar the Viking, which is a Dreamcast homebrew game, which is always released on these Retrobat releases. So by the looks of it, there's lots of new content to download within the Content Downloader. And if I just press right on my D-pad, we'll go over to intro videos. Now, When you boot up Retrobat, you'll get a video pop up. Like I was saying just now in the videos folder, we can actually download additional videos nowadays with Retrobat, which is pretty cool. So lots there, and what we're going to do is actually just download one of these. So say Tetris Intro by Scotty Retro. Scotty Retro, he contributes a hell of a lot to the Retrobat community. And install. Now, something else I'm going to be covering fairly soon is that we've now got 3D Zen Launchers Pack Volume 1. For those who's unaware, 3D Zen is a Nintendo NES or a Nintendo NES 8-bit emulator which makes games 3D. I've covered this on my channel on separate guides, even done a showcase. So I'm going to be doing a Retrobat tutorial for this one fairly soon. And if we go to shaders and mega bezels, we can then pimp out our retro games by adding some of these. But again, I've covered this already on my channel, so do check out those playlists. And if we go to the bezel project, it appears nothing's actually in bezel project at the moment. As you know, I've literally started recording this video literally minutes before it dropped on me that it just released. Now, what I was saying just a minute ago, if you're currently using version 5 or say version 6, beta 2 or beta 3, what you need to do is through updates and downloads, just make sure that update type is selected to stable, and then you just go to start update. Now for me, this isn't going to update because as we know, I've literally just got stable version 6 here. Other things we can do from the main menu, if you're new to Retrobat, is controller settings. If I go in here, we've then got the ability to actually map out our controllers. So I'm going to enter this by pressing A on my controller. If you're using a keyboard at this point, then Z comes out and X goes in. So I'm going to map my controller. I'm using a Google Stadia controller. And what I'm going to do with the first option here, it says South. So I'm going to press A. And then East is going to be represented on my controller, on my Google Stadia controller with the B button. North is going to be Y. West is going to be X, and so on. Now, start and select buttons. Nowadays with modern day controllers, you no longer really get start and select buttons. So use your imagination and think old school, and then you can map those out. D-pad up. And if you're new to the world of front ends or anything like that, then just remember that hotkey means that it's the buttons on your controller you're going to press to exit a game. Okay, another feature we got here, which I'm going to show you about in a minute when I start adding some games into Retrobat, is Scraper. Now, with Scraper, you're going to need to go into Scraper options. And from here, you can then use image source and box source. Normally, I recommend image source being box 3D, box source being box 2D. And we can also download preview videos for our games. I always say get fan art. If official original art don't download, then fan art is a good backup to use. Now with this, you're going to need to sign up with Screen Scraper, which is absolutely free. Once you've finished signing up with Screen Scraper, you simply then just put your username and your password in. Okay, and since I've got nothing to scrape right now, I'm just going to go back, but my details are now put in. So once I put some games into the ROMs folder, we can then go on to that. And now my new theme is downloaded, I'm going to go to User Interface Settings, and it's downloaded and it's installed to the theme set. So if we go in here, here's the theme which I downloaded just now. If I press A on this to select it, I'm then going to press B to come out, and here we go. And if we press select on your controller, you're going to get access to what's known as a quick access window. This is like a menu. So we got a view user manual option here. We got launch screen saver. We can restart the system and everything else. And we can also use this to quit EmulationStation, which is what I'm going to do now. Really quit, yes. Okay, so to add some games, what I'm going to do is just head over to my most favourite website for homebrew games, and this is itch.io. Now, if you're new to my channel, get used to it. I'm a big C64 fan, so I'm going to add a Commodore 64 game to this. And I'm randomly going to select Super Carlin the Spider. download now. And again, just like Retrobat, if you feel like donating to the developer behind Supercar and the Spider, donate minimum of $2.99. Or, no thanks, just take me to the downloads. We're going to download this. Here's my game, Supercar and the Spider. And within this download, I've now got a folder inside. I'm going to just take this out, drag it onto my desktop. If I go inside of here, I've then got the disk file which I need, or even a tape file. I'm going to use the disk file for this, Supercar in the Spider.d64. Now, be mindful that when you're downloading games and you're adding games to Retrobat, in terms of coming to scrape your game's artwork, possibly and potentially, if you've got files like this with numbers everywhere, there's a good chance that your scraper software won't pick this up. So sometimes it's worth your while of just editing how these games are titled. So I'm going to take away all of these spaces here, and here we go. So I'm going to add this into my Retrobat ROMs folder by right-clicking on my Retrobat shortcut, open file location, and we're going to put this in the ROMs folder. If I just search for C64, here it is. And I'm going to just pop that inside the C64 ROMs folder. Now, if we open up Retrobat again, and as you remember just a minute ago, I also downloaded a new video for when Retrobat boots up, and that's it. That's Tetris. I quite like that. That's pretty cool. So now we put a game into our ROMs folder, we can see C64. If we go in here, first of all, I'm going to scrape some artwork. I'm going to press main menu, go down to scraper, and because I put my credentials in, I'm going to go to scrape now. And when you're scraping, you will notice in the top right hand side, it's telling you what is scraping. This is normally what happens. Scrape and finish, update game list to apply changes. Go to game settings, update game lists, and really update game lists, yes. Now you're also going to find with particular themes that your artwork might not necessarily display. So for that reason, I'm going to change this back to the default theme, which is Theme Carbon Master. And remember to come out of here, press B on your controller. Okay, so we simply got no artwork for this. So what I'm going to do is actually add another game to this in a minute. So hopefully the next game we got will work. So in order to run your games through Retrobat, normally what happens is by pressing select button, you're going to view options. And from here, we can go to advanced system options. And under emulator, you're likely going to find Libretto. Now, Libretto literally means retroarch. Like I say at the start of this video, Retrobat predominantly runs with retroarch in the background. Now, different cores, what are known as cores here, have different abilities. And my personal favorite for C64 emulation is actually the Vicetime64 SC core. If I select this by pressing A, and let's boot up the game first. So I'm going to press A to open it. And as you can see, Retrobat boots straight into my RetroArch selected core, and we got my Commodore 64 game running. If you're interested in microcomputers, then normally through this system, if you press select or your equivalent of select on your controller, you'll get a virtual keyboard come up. And for many C64 games, ZX Spectrum games, even Amstrad CPC and some Amiga games, you'll obviously need a keyboard, a virtual keyboard at some point. This is a good example. Supercar and the Spider loads game, so I need to bring up my virtual keyboard, and I'm going to go up to the digit 1 and press A. And in a lot of cases, if you want to speed up the process of loading, just press spacebar. Okay, so we can also access the RetroArch quick menu whilst we're in gameplay. Obviously, this is for RetroArch systems only. I'm pressing down on my left analog stick and pressing down on my right bumper at the same time. From here, we can do a lot of things. We can go to controls. From port 1 controls, we can change device type. So if your controller isn't working, under device types, we can select one which will work. We also got other options within quick menus, such as disk control. So say you're playing a Commodore Amiga game, or you're using a Commodore 64 game and it asks for disk 2 or disk 3 or so on to be inserted. Under disk control, you can go down to load new disk and you'll likely see the second, third or fourth whatever disk listed here. In that case, just select the second disk and then just insert disk, and that will then load your second disk for your game. If I press B to come out of here and B again, I'm actually going to download cheats, which I mentioned earlier on. I'm not going to go into too much detail with it, but to do this, we're going to go down to Online Updater, and from here we're going to go down to Update Cheats, let this download and extract. And if you want to find out more about using cheats in Retrobat, like I say, I have done a guide on that, but this is how you do it very briefly. From this menu just here, we can also go back to quick menu. And if we go down to core options, we can then play around with video settings for, say, C64, such as pixel aspect ratio. And let me just say that most RetroArch systems, which you emulate through Retrobat, generally have the same type of layout as this, although something like Commodore 64 does have more options, because C64 emulation, just like most microcomputer emulation, has more things to offer. If you're going to go down the console route, such as Super Nintendo, Mega Drive, or PC Engine, then it'll be a little bit more simplified rather than having things that we can see here, such as VIC-2 filters, which is a Commodore 64 video chip, that type of thing. So what we're going to do is actually quit and go back to Retrobat, which you can do through this RetroArch menu. Just go to Quick RetroArch and press A. And here we go. So since I couldn't demonstrate downloading artwork, what I'm going to do is just quit out of Retrobat now and actually add another game into Retrobat, a game which requires BIOS files. So I'm going to go to Quit. Now I've got a 3DO game just here, and 3DO requires BIOS files. I'm going to briefly show you how to do this. So first of all, Retrobat, we're going to go to Open File Location, and we're going to go back down to the ROMs folder again. And 3DO is right at the top just here. My 3DO game is in here, and this is in CHD file extension. If I just drag that into the 3DO folder within ROMs. Also going to need some BIOS files. Now, since Retrobat doesn't have the ability right now to tell us which files we're missing for games that requires BIOS files, easiest way around this is actually to use Google or your favorite search engine, because remember, these are going to be powered using RetroArch. So let's just boot up Retrobat for now and see if this game is recognized. Okay, so we can now see 3DO. If we just go inside of here, first of all, it's useful to know what's going to be powering this. If we go to Advanced System Options, Emulator, as we can see just here, the RetroArch Core Opera is going to make this game work, or we can download Phoenix. And like I was saying earlier on in this video, we can also download emulators through Retrobat. What I'm going to do is just select this one to open up with the Retro Opera. And now we know what we're going to be powering, we can now find out which BIOS files we need very simply. Just quit out of Retrobat. The best way to do this is just to search using your favorite search engine, say RetroArch 3DO. And this is what I've done. So we got Opera just here, and this is obviously RetroArch Core. And just here, it's going to list what BIOS files we need. So I'm going to take a look at these BIOS files. And once you've found which BIOS files that particular system needs, we're simply going to go back to Retrobat shortcut, right click, open file location, and in the BIOS folder, like I mentioned before at the start of this video, we're going to loosely place those required BIOS files inside of this folder. That's simple. So if we open up Retrobat, Okay, so if we go back in the 3DO and just make sure that that retroarch core selected, which it is, we can now boot up the game. If you don't have the BIOS files, it's going to just come back on itself. And in some cases, it will say it's missing BIOS files because Retrobat is looking for BIOS files to cover other systems. And as you can see, we're now booted into the 3DO. And like I said before, once we're finished with a game, you can either press your hotkeys, which will take you back into Retrobat, or by pressing 2-button combination, you can go to quick menu. And for example, from here, if we go to core options, your options will then vary from the options which I showed you just a minute ago for C64. And remember, you can also quit out of RetroArch and head back to Retrobat from RetroArch by going to quit RetroArch here. So let's just actually scrape some artwork. So again, to scrape, scraper, and scrape now. And game settings, update game list, yes. And here we go. See, I did tell you that it does work. I just got very unlucky with the first time around the scraping. So now that I've got that artwork, user interface settings, and I'm going to go back to theme set and apply a touch of glass. Which is looking pretty snazzy in a theme, which looks a little bit better rather than the default theme that comes with Retrobat. Okay, very briefly, I cover this in most of my setup guides, but through Retrobat, we can actually change how games look. So you can do this by pressing select on your controller or the equivalent of select, advanced system options. Under shaders, we can actually add scan lines and we can apply curvature, shaders, that type of thing. We've also got decorations. Now you'll notice that when I was playing these games, the C64 game and this 3DO game, we got panels on the side. So you can leave that to default, or you can go to none and that'll remove those decorations. Now, normally, if you want a full screen, one of your games, by doing this, you will need to select none. If you leave a decoration in place and select aspect ratio to full, which I'm going to show you in a minute, then your game is going to be cropped off by those decorations. So I'm going to select none on this. Game aspect ratio. So with Retrobat, by selecting auto, it's going to select for you the next option, which is 4:3 aspect ratio. Now, because I removed the decorations, I'm going to put this to full. Integer scaling, just make sure this is on, or like I say, just leave it to auto, and that's gonna take away some pixelation. Vertical sync is always useful to have on this, yes, especially if you're playing 3D games. Vertical sync is going to take away any screen tear. And we've also got visual rendering, and let me just make you aware that most systems in Retrobat are going to have these very similar options like this one for 3DO just here. Visual rendering, video filters, we can apply more options such as scan lines to our games to make games look more retro. Smooth games by linear filtering. By auto, this one's going to be off. Let's put this one on, and like it said, it actually smooths out games, eliminating any pixelation. And we normally got drivers too. Now, if you're finding a game which should boot doesn't boot, normally if you go to drivers in a video, change over your backend's driver. By default, this is going to be OpenGL. Some games on other systems will require your backend's video driver to be selected as Vulkan. For me, this works okay as OpenGL, especially for 3DO and C64. If we go down to emulation, most of your RetroArch cores, or rather Retrobat, has this option for emulation, which will vary system to system. If we go back into this game, you'll now see that the sides are now different, and we're now going to be in full screen modes with some pixelation disappeared because we've used different shaders. Okay, today I've got a very special setup guide for beginners and people that calls ourselves noobs or newbies. This is a full setup guide for the very awesome Nostlan front-end system. So in this setup guide I'm going to be showing you how to install emulators using this front-end, as well as importing your games, getting some cover artwork, and also looking at some more advanced systems such as the initial setup process for playing Wii games in Nostlan. So if you're a fan of Retrobat or something very basic like that, then Nostlan, without a doubt, is definitely for you. Check this one out. Before I start today's Nostlan front-end setup guide for Windows PC, if you like what you see today, hit notification, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation content on my channel, Just Jamie. That just means you'll get up-to-date retro emulation setup guides like this one you're watching today, and it helps my channel out too. So we're looking at perhaps the easiest front-end system right next to Retrobat. In fact, I do believe this one's actually easier than Retrobat. So for those out there who consider yourself as newbies or noobs, as I read from time to time in my comments, definitely without a doubt this one's for you. Now I'm also going to need to apologise in advance. There's a very annoying dog barking. I've done everything I can to try and stop this noise, but I can't stop this noise. But anyways, let's get on with this, and hopefully this dog you can hear barking won't prove to be so much of an annoyance like it is to me right now. So we're going to download Nostlan, and I'm going to leave the links in my description for this. And we're going to download the latest version of this, which released in January actually. So nostlan.setup.exe, and we're just going to let this one download. Nostlan does have a website, so you can check that out as well. And what we're going to do is just go to the setup just here, so left click on that one. Windows protected your PC. If you've got Windows 11, just go to more info, run anyway. And we're just going to let this install for a second. Okay, so we're now in Nostlan, and this is it. It's pretty simple stuff. So what we need to do first is obviously select the language that we want. So it's going to be English in my case. Now at this point I'm using my cursor, my mouse actually. You can use a controller with this, but I'm going to get onto that in a little while. So we're going to select English. And that's it. That's all there is to it. So we're going to just go to start setup now. Nostlan setup. So what we need to do is actually choose an install location. So what I'm going to do is just let this go ahead and install in my documents, and it's going to create a new folder in this documents folder called Emu. But I'm going to show you in a minute how to get to that. So if I just go to install documents, let that create a new folder called Emu. Okay, so it's actually taken us straight here. So as we can see, in Documents and Emu, we've got several folders here. Each one of these folders represents a system that Nostlan supports. Let's actually go back into Nostlan. If I go to Finish Setup, and what this does every time you launch it is checks for an update. And here we go. So support Nostlan for $2 a month. You can actually access premium features. However, if I go to remind me later, we can continue and use this. So the next thing we're going to see is we're going to need to install some games. Now, if we go to System just here, this is where we can start adding emulators, which we can actually do majority of the time directly through Nostlan. There are emulators here, which I'm going to do setup guides at later dates for things like PlayStation 3 and also Wii U. But the majority of these just here really is a simple case of just selecting your system. So I'm going to select NES. And it's going to say no NES games found just here. What I'm actually going to do first is install a Nintendo NES emulator. So I'm going to select install MFCEUX. If I left click on this one, and what this is doing is downloading it for us automatically, and it's going into that Emu folder, and it's going to go into the NES folder, so we can see what's going on right just here. Now what we're going to do next is go back to Nostlan. As we can see, it's successfully downloaded and installed. If I just press OK on this, what we're going to do next is add some games. So if I go to NES, we're going to go to Browse for a Games folder. Now at this point, what we need to do is link this up to where our games are located. So if I go to Browse for Games folder, from here, I'm going to just locate where my NES games are. And you're also going to notice at the top just here, it says game files must have the file extension, in this case .NES or .FDS. If your NES games are in .zip, it isn't going to detect it. So I'm going to locate my Nintendo NES games. So my NES games are in this folder just here. If I just left click on that folder, go to select folder, and as you can see now, it's scanning my Nintendo NES collection. What this automatically does for you too is actually downloads the artwork for you. So depending how many games you've got on your computer, it's going to take longer in some cases, but if you've got a few games, then it's not going to take very long at all. So we're just going to let this scan for now. Okay, and after finally some time of just waiting for that process, we can see Nintendo NES artwork. And if I just scroll up and down, the whole screen is literally taken up with Nintendo NES games. I think this looks pretty cool. So what we can do from here is actually boot up a game because we've already installed the emulator itself. Now if I go for something like Power Blades 2, okay, so before I start trying this out, what I need to do is press escape on my keyboard, and I'm going to go to quit. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is just show you how to get to Nostlan directory. So I've just installed it, and as you can see, there's actually no shortcut on my desktop. We've got the creation folder for your games to go on, which is in Documents in the Emu folder, but like I say, there's no actual shortcut to open it back up again. So the best way to do this is just search for it. So just type into your search bar Nostlan. Now you're going to see I've got two just here. We got a setup.exe. You don't want to be doing that, otherwise you're likely going to wipe all the progress you made. So just make sure you've got the correct one here. And if I just right click on this and go to open file location, here it is just here, and from here I can actually right click on that, open file location, and here we go. And whilst I'm here, I'm going to make a shortcut of this, so in future, instead of having to go through this palaver, what I can do is actually make this a shortcut on my desktop. So right click, send to desktop, and there we go. And now my Bluetooth controller, Xbox controller is connected. If I just open up Nostlan again, and here we go. So my controller is now working with this. Okay, so I'm going to randomly select Mega Man 2, and to open this, if I press the B button on my controller, it's going to bring us into a closer up image. And we can also go left and right to choose games from here. If I then press B on Mega Man 2, it's going to bring us to another image, and B again, and finally we're going to play it with M-FCEUX, which is the emulator that I downloaded and installed using Nostlan. If I press B on this, and if I press escape on my keyboard, I can also access this by pressing a particular button on my controller. This is going to pause the game. So from here I can choose load state, save state, I can mute it. I can even show console, which brings up a terminal. To actually quit out the game, we're just going to go to stop. And then from here, what we need to do is just go back. So one of the buttons on your controller is going to act as the back key. In my case, it's the A button. And that brings us back out again. Okay, next thing I'm going to show you is how to add Sega Mega Drive games. So I've got 3 games here for Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. Each one of these are in .zip file extension. If I open up one of these, inside we got a MD file, which is Mega Drive file. What we're going to do then is open up Nostlan again, and we're going to add. So what we need to do whilst we're in Nostlan is just go to System, and it will say select a system. So in this case, I'm going to go for Genesis, and of course Genesis is also Mega Drive. Just select Genesis. This is going to bring up a picture of traditional Model 1 Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. What we're going to do is install Emulator. So I'm going to install Web Retro. And just like the previous emulator I installed, it's building it itself, as we can see just here. This is now built. So if I go back over to Nostlan, install Web Retro, okay. Now what we're going to need to do is add some games. So again, I'm going to go back to Genesis. And we're going to browse for games folder. Now at the top just here, just like the Nintendo NES, you're going to notice that game files must have the file extension .md, .snd, .gen, and so on. Now just noticed a minute ago my games are in .zip file extension. They're not going to work. So what we need to do then is just extract these. So I'm using WinRAR. If I right click on each game, and the MD then comes out, and that's what we need. So WinRAR again, extract here, and we also got Sonic Hedgehog 3, so extract here again, and you can also delete those .zip files. We don't need those anymore. So back over on Nostlan, if I just OK this in Browse for Games folder again, what I'm going to do is just go over to my Mega Drive folder and just left click on it. If I select folder, it's then going to start importing the games into Nostlan complete with artwork, just like Nintendo NES. And as we can see, it's now scanned and recognised 3 games. So randomly, it's come up with these box art images, but they're going to work. And what we could actually do, if needs be, is actually Google these images and place them into the Nostlan images folder. But let's just check if these games work. So I'm going to check out Robocop vs Terminator, absolute classic. And again, it will zoom in, and looks like we got artwork missing for the Mega Drive cartridge as well. And play game with Retro Genesis Plus GX.
Excellent.
And again, by pressing the escape button on the keyboard, I've also got the option here to load state in save state. If I go to save state, just left click on this or use your controller. And it's also going to give us a warning when you're saving your games. As it says, do not rename your ROM file after this. It's specific to the name of that ROM file. Okay? And if I press escape again, and what I'm going to do is go to load state. And as you can see, it just loaded back where I was originally. Again, now this time what I'm going to do is show you how to set up something like Wii. I'm not going to go all the way with Wii, but this is going to show you that we can actually go outside of Nostlan to external places such as the Dolphin website in order to download and install emulators outside of Nostlan. So if I just click on Wii just here, and what it's going to ask us for is to install Dolphin first. And if I left click on install Dolphin, it's going to bring up the emu folder where the emulator should be. So for this, what we're going to need to do is just head over to the Dolphin website. So this is Dolphin, and what I'm going to do is just download Dolphin for Windows, and I'm going to download the Windows x64 version. And here's the content. So we need to drag these contents into that directory, which is Dolphin just here. So if I highlight everything, left click and drag and drop. Okay, so here we go. So what I'm going to do next is go back to Nostlan. Okay. And what we're going to do is install Dolphin. And this time it says you already have this emulator installed on your computer. So that's all set up. If I press OK on this, next it's going to ask us to browse for games. So for this, what I need to do is find my Nintendo Wii games. So I've got my Wii folder just here, and what I'm going to do, just like the other systems, just select folder, and it's then going to start importing the games over to Nostlan as well as downloading image art. So like I said, I've covered this particular emulator, which is Dolphin, and you can check that out in my standalone consoles playlist. And using that guide will help you emulate the nunchuck in the Wiimote with a conventional controller, say an Xbox controller. Okay, and once that's finished doing its thing, you should then have a complete screen of Wii games. So this is Wii games from my collection. And to open up one of these games, you can either go through the process with your controller, or you can even use the mouse if you want. For example, if I go for a Need for Speed to Run, and open it again, and just bear in mind, these Wii games are unlikely going to run straight away from your controller. You will have to go into the emulator, Dolphin emulator itself, in order to configure that. But like I say, you can easily follow my Dolphin emulator setup guide, and that will explain everything from controller settings to enhancing video settings. So what we're going to do is open up the game, and we're going to play a game with Dolphin. And here we go, we're in. Now, like I say, it's totally worth your while in following my guide. For example, this is opened up in a window. Now, what I'm going to do, just for this video, is show you how to boot up your Wii games in full screen mode rather than window mode. So, all we need to do is go to Graphics and start in full screen. If I close out of here and close out of Dolphin, if I then go to reopen my Wii game, open with Dolphin, and here we go, we're booting straight into the game in full screen mode. But what I'll do for this is actually leave a link in my description so you can follow the Dolphin guide. And trust me when I say you can make Wii games through emulation look amazingly great, because let's be honest, they didn't look great in their day, and they still don't today. This is why emulation is so great, especially for Wii games. You can make these games look outstanding. But anyways, escape, and we'll close out a dolphin. That's going to bring us back into Nostlan again. So excellent news for Batocera fans, we have just got Batocera 39 and this version is known as Painted Lady. So before I start today's setup guide for this, if you like what you see today, hit notifications, subscribe and like so you don't miss upcoming retro emulation setup guides like this one right now you're watching. Also helps my channel a lot, plus you get notified each time I release a new setup guide. So yes, I covered Batocera 38 probably around 4 or 5 months ago, and some people's had issues with version 38 and some's been fine with it. So let's get on to this. This is going to be the second update video I've done today. Earlier on today I actually uploaded Emu Deck for Windows, and that's the latest version which actually released today as well. So anyways, let's get on with this one. What we're going to do is head over to batocera.org, and here it is, shiny and bright, get Batocera Linux 39. Before you go into this and actually download it, you might consider taking a look at the changelog. So obviously the changelog is going to give it the title, which is obviously Painted Lady. It's going to give us some special notes, and it's going to give us all the changes and what's been added. So plenty of features which has been added to retroarch, to different modes of support for guns, that type of thing. So lots there to look at, including lots of fixes for controls. So yeah, Batocera 39 is a very good release, so it seems. And here we go, RetroArch is now been updated to 1.16.0.3. Lots of changes here, including Big Emu. So what we're going to do then is actually go back and download it. So if we go get Batocera Linux 39. Now this setup guide is going to be for desktop PC, or if you're running the laptop, that's going to be fine as well. So what we're going to do is just go to download. It's just over 3 GB in size, so what I'm going to do whilst I'm waiting is grab some flashing software. I'm also going to be using a USB stick, that's a SanDisk for this. So as always, I'm going to get myself a copy of Balena Etcher, and what this will do is actually flash that Batocera 39 image onto my USB stick. So what I'm going to do is just go to download Etcher, and I'm going to download the portable version for this. So if I just go to download. Somebody was asking me the other day, what's the difference between installer and portable? So installer means that it's going to be installed to your computer literally, and portable just means that you're going to get a file or within a single folder, so everything's self-contained without the need of installing it. Now ideally, to use Batocera, if you've got a wealth of games, I would suggest at least say a 64 GB. If you're looking to pack it out, then you're obviously looking at well over 500 GB for the size. I also recommend a USB 3 rather than an old school USB 2. Transfer speeds on USB 3 are a lot quicker, so I seriously recommend you getting one of them. Okay, so we finally downloaded Batocera 39, so I've got the image just here ready to flash, and I've also downloaded Balena Etcher. So what I need to do is open up Balena Etcher just by double left clicking. So here we go, the first thing we're going to want to do is go to Flash from File, and we need to point this to where our Batocera 39 image is, where I've just downloaded this from. So it's on my desktop, so I'm going to go to Desktop, and if I just scroll down, I'm going to find it here at the bottom. So double left click. Now the next part you need to pay attention to is where to flash it to. So if you've got a few different USB drives attached to your computer, then just make sure you select the correct one. So if I go to change, the only drive I've got attached to it is external, is the only one I've got in, which is what I'm going to be using. So this is in location G, and that's fine. So I'm going to just make sure this is selected, and I'm going to select one and just go to flash. Now this can take a considerable amount of time to flash, so please be patient. And whilst we're waiting for this to flash, let's head over to Retro Achievements, and I'll leave the link in my description. And what we can do is actually link this with Batocera. So Retro Achievements is going to give you little achievement pop-ups for particular retro games. It's got a very nice community, and they're always uploading, or rather updating, new achievements to get. So anyways, I'll leave the link in my description, and you can sign up with this and then use your username and password inside of Batocera. Next thing I suggest you doing is signing up for free and registering with Screen Scraper. So again, just like Retro Achievements, once we're inside of Batocera, we can actually scrape artwork using Screen Scraper database. But to do this, you do need to register for this. And again, just like Retro Achievements, once we're inside of Batocera 39, we can then use this login in order to download artwork in preview videos. So again, link's going to be in my description for this. Okay, if we check out Balena Etcher again, after it's finished flashing, it will go through a validating process. As we can see right now, we're on 68%. Now, I'll likely say 99% of the time, you don't really have to wait for this. So, in this case, I'm going to just go to skip. And this is then going to display what's actually on the USB drive. So what I'm going to do next then is actually add some games onto USB device. So once we're in Batocera, we can easily transfer some games over. So I'm going to just plug in another USB drive. So I've now attached my USB drive, and what I'm going to do on here on the root, and the root means the first thing that you see once you plug it in, I'm going to just create a couple of new folders in here. So new folder, and I'm going to call this folder NES. And the other folder I'm going to create is going to be, say, Mega Drive. And on my desktop, I've got a NES game, and I've also got a Mega Drive game. So Mega Drive game, I'm going to put into that Mega Drive folder. And the NES game, I'm going to pop into that NES folder. Now, let me give you a little heads up. If you do have BIOS files and you want to play things like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, all those systems which require BIOS files, just do this. Just give your folder the name BIOS. It will just make things easier once we're in Batocera in order to transfer things over. So what I'm going to do now is unplug everything and turn on the laptop with my USB stick inserted. Okay, so inserted into my laptop, before I boot up, I've got a controller connected. I've also got a mouse connected, which is wired. And I've, of course, got my Batocera image on my flash drive just there. So we need to boot into BIOS mode. Now, computers are going to differ. Now, I'm using an ASUS VivaBook. So in order for me to access my BIOS menu on this particular motherboard or computer, what I'm going to do is hold on to the F2 key and then press on power. And then that should then take us into BIOS. And here we go. So this is my BIOS menu. And from here, what I need to do is actually go over to boot priority. And I can see under just there, it says UEFI. And this is actually my external drive with Batocera. So what I need to do is just change priority of this. So when I boot up the computer, it's going to read straight from that USB drive rather than the installed operating system, which is Windows 11. So what I also need to do is go to advanced mode. And if I go up to security, you should see something very similar on the computers you're going to be using called Secure Boot. If you open up Secure Boot Control, just make sure this one is disabled, and then we can save. Then I'm going to press Escape key in order to exit, and save configuration and reset if I press OK. And it's going to display on the top left corner boot in Batocera. At that point, you know you're in. And here we go. So it's just resizing things, that's fine. And that's it, we're finally into Batocera 39. So I'm using my Google Stadia controller for this. And of course we can use left and right on D-pad. And generally it will work, but we need to actually set this up correctly. So if I press start on my Stadia controller, which is going to bring up main menu from here, if I go down to controller and Bluetooth settings, the first option I'm going to see is controller mapping. If I press my A button on this, it's going to tell us that we can map a controller from here. So if I press A on OK, it's going to give us configure input, 1 gamepad detected. So what I need to do is quite literally keep my finger pressed on a button, and that's going to bring up configuring. So from here, it's going to tell us south, and it says press anything. So in this case, I'm going to press my A button, which is, well, my south button. Then I'm going to go my east, north, west, start, select, and so on until I get to the bottom. Now let me just remind you, if you're new to this type of system, this type of front-end system, your hotkey, which is the bottom option here, exit us from game. So whichever button you press, just remember which button that is. And if I go to OK, so that's a controller setup, and if I press B to come out of here, what we're going to do next is go down to Scraper. What we're going to do is now set up Scraper. So during the process of flashing the image onto USB, I did mention going over to Screen Scraper, and here is where we can set our settings. But before we do that, we actually need to connect this to our network. So what we're going to do is go to Network Settings, which is in Main Menu. And what we're going to do from here is just go down to Enable Wi-Fi. And that's going to just pause for a few seconds. It's not going to crash, so just be patient with this. Now, Wi-Fi SID is going to be the name of your network. So if I just go into my Wi-Fi SID, I can find my network just here. And then obviously your Wi-Fi key is your network's password. So I'm going to just enter my password in. Okay, once you've entered your Wi-Fi key password, just go down one and go to back. Now, when this is finally set up, you should see in the top right a little Wi-Fi symbol, and there we go. So Wi-Fi enabled. Sometimes it means that you got to reset or restart Batocera, but in this case, it's identified my network straight away. So what we're going to do then is go down to Scraper and scrape from Screen Scraper. If I go to Scraper Settings, right at the bottom, we're going to find username. And this is what I was talking about just now over on the Screen Scraper website. We need a username and password to pop into this. So I'm going to just put in my username. Okay, once you've done that, we just go down to back. And that's all registered now, we signed up. So when I go on to the scraping part a little later on, we'll see how that works. Also, under Scraper Settings, we've got a selection of options here. So your top option will say Image Source. I recommend selecting Box 3D. And under Logo Source, I personally recommend Marquee. Now, just below it, under Scrape From, we can enable different pieces of artwork to scrape, including video preview. So if I enable video, and I'm also going to enable fan art. What this means is that if there isn't official artwork for particular games, then it will scrape fan art instead, which is better than nothing. I'm also going to download manual, and that's it. So if we come out of here, now let's actually test if the network is working when I just set it up. So to test this, what I'm going to do is download a theme, and you can do this through Main Menu. If I press Start to access this, if I go down to Updates and Downloads, Themes, we got an array of themes just here, which we can download. Now, personally, I think A Touch of Glass is a wicked theme, but it's very big. And obviously, you're going to want to preserve as much hard drive space to put your games on. So I'm going to go for something a little bit more basic, which is only 34 megabyte. That's a Star Wars theme. So if I install this by pressing A, and top right corner, you can see it's downloading. And it's been installed successfully. So if I press my B button to exit, and again, in order to apply this theme, from Main Menu, I'm going to just go up to User Interface Settings, Theme Set, and you'll find your downloaded themes here. And here we go, Star Wars. And if I press back, which is going to be my B button, and here we go, we have now got Star Wars Stormtrooper. So next thing I'm going to talk to you about is actually using retro achievements. So again, just like Screen Scraper, is something else you can add. So in order to use this, you obviously need to register with retro achievements, which I told you about just now. So from here, what we're going to do is just go up to Game Settings. If we just go to the second option down, that's retro achievement settings. What we need to do here is enable retro achievements, and then you simply pop in your username and your password. And once you've done that, it will then connect you. So when you play your games, it will then give you rewards for particular games, that is. And we also got a plenitude of options here, such as unlocking sounds once we get a retro achievement. So that's it. And whilst I'm thinking of it, we can actually customize how this theme looks. So if I go back to main menu, user interface settings, theme configuration, I can then do different things. So for example, theme background, I've got different mixes here. If I use mix 5 and press B to come out, there we go. And we can do that as much as we want. So mix 3, and there we go. So lots of different styles there. And just again, user interface settings, theme configuration, and default grid size, which means that when we add our games, the icons, or the grids rather, the games will become small or larger depending on the grid size of that. And if you just want to set your theme back to standard or default, then just go down to reset customizations and you're back to scratch. Now, if you want extra help for buttons or anything like that with Batocera, if you press the select button on your controller, quick access, we can go to view user manual. If I press A to select this, we can then access the Batocera Linux user guide. And it's going to tell you lots of different button configurations. So there's lots of information there, including how to use Kodi, retro achievements, which I've covered, and screen scraper. So some useful information there. So next thing we need to know then is obviously how to put our games on here. So I'm going to press F1 on my keyboard. And that's going to bring us to this screen. Now it's at this point where you're going to need to plug in your USB drive with your games on, which is what I've done just now with the NES and the Mega Drive. And this is exactly what the mouse comes in useful for. We need the mouse connected in order to play around with things here. So my USB drive, my games, is listed on the left at the bottom. It says new volume. And my games are in here. So I've got my NES folder. So what I need to do is just right click on that game, go to copy, and then I need to go up to ROMs, which is a folder on the left hand side. And you're going to find lots of subfolders in here, and this represents each system that Batocera covers. So obviously I need to find my NES folder, which is here, and I'm going to just right click and left click on paste, and that's now pasted my NES game in. And again, I'm going to go back to my drive I just attached, new volume, and this time I'm going to go to Mega Drive, and again right click, copy, and go to ROMs folder on the left hand side and find the Mega Drive folder. And then again, just right click and paste. And that's it. So if you're using more advanced systems which require BIOS, largely your BIOS files will go into the BIOS folder on the left hand side loosely. But in particular instances, we will have to put BIOS files in the folders just here. But like I say, largely most of your BIOS files can just be pasted loosely into this field just here. So what we need to do next is go up to File, which is on your top left hand side, and then just go down to Close Window. So we're now back into Batocera, but we don't see our games appear. They're nowhere to be found. So what we need to do to make the game show is just go to Main Menu by pressing Start, Game Settings, and I'm going to press A, Update Game List, press A again, Really Update Game List, yes. Now if I go to my Genesis folder, I've now got my game here, but we've got no artwork. And I should also find my Nintendo NES game in my NES folder, and here we go. So what I need to do then is scrape the artwork for these games. So I'm going to press my Start button, and if I go down to Scraper, I've already set this up. So I'm going to go to Scrape now. And in the top right hand side of the screen, you should see Scraping. And what this is doing is just connecting to the Screen Scraper database and collecting our artwork for us. Okay, so scraping finished. So what we need to do, it says update game list to apply changes. Again, if I press Start and go down one to Game Settings, update game list, really update game list, yes. So if I go back into my Nintendo NES folder, my NES game now has artwork in the preview video. And if I go into my Genesis folder, which is of course Mega Drive if you're in certain parts of the world, my Sonic game is now got art in the preview video. So what I'm going to do next is actually open up one of these games. So if I open up my next game, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I used to play the hell out of as a kid, I'm just going to press A to open up this. And here we go, complete with what's called an overlay on each side. Okay, and using the hotkeys is just exit me from that. So if you're still confused with hotkeys, when I went to map my controller just now, right at the bottom it said hotkey, and that's the key, or rather the button we press in order to exit the games. So if I then go over to my Mega Drive game, which is in my Genesis folder, once I'm inside a folder, if I press select and go down to advanced system options and press A, I can change different things here, such as the game aspect ratio. I can change it from 4:3, which is its current ratio, to something like 4, which is going to give us a full screen. If I go to game renderings and shaders, shader set, I can actually apply something called curvature to give us an old curvature CRT TV look. If I apply curvature, and we can actually configure controllers for these systems individually. So if I go down further to controllers, I can actually map out controller 1 input map in here for Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis. So with those two settings applied, if I open up Sonic the Hedgehog 2, now as you can see just now, the game was playing fine and the CRTV look is there, but the overlays is obscuring it. So what we need to do is access the RetroArch quick menu, which is powering this game. And in fact, RetroArch is going to power probably around 85-90% of your games through Batocera. So what I've done to access this menu is hold down my left analog stick and my right bumper. And what we can do from here is very good stuff with RetroArch. So if I use my down button on my D-pad, I'm going to come across an option here called on-screen overlay. If I turn this off just by pressing A on my controller and press B to come out, and again, and I'm going to press A on quick menu, and if I press A again to resume, the overlay is now gone, and as we can see, I've got curvature. Okay, something else I'm going to show you is from main menu. If we just scroll down to updates and downloads again, if we select content downloader, we can download some homebrew games from here, some extra bezels in order to make our games look good. And there's lots here to take a look at. Like I said, lots of homebrew games for Game Boy. And if we come out of here and go down to the bezel project, we can download specific bezel packs for things like Commodore 64, Game Boy Advance. They are pretty sizable, some of these, but we can apply them and make games look a lot better. Now, if you get any issues with your sound output, if we just go again from main menu down to system settings, if we just scroll down, we're going to find audio output. just make sure the correct output device is selected here, and also under your audio profile, just experiment and eventually you'll find the one which is going to work and produce sounds for you. Now, in order to actually install Batocera onto an older computer, if you've got no use of that older computer, we can actually install it from the USB stick which we flashed. And you can do this under Install on New Disk, Target Device, and then you're obviously going to find the hard drive for that computer or laptop you want to install Batocera onto. I'm not going to select this because obviously this is my main computer, Windows 11, I do all my videos on. And we're also going to want to make sure that target architecture is selected as times 86_64, or someone rightly corrected me a while back, x86_64. And then you go to Are You Sure, enable this and install. And what that's going to do is then install Batocera onto your hard drive, so you will no longer need to use your BIOS menu in order to use Batocera. It will actually boot straight into it. So if I then close down, so to exit correctly out of Batocera, main menu, quit, and I'm going to go down to shut down system, yes. So if, like me, you're just going to use this and you're not actually going to install it to your hard drive, then we're going to need to go back into BIOS in order for you to boot back into your operating system. So obviously you're going to need to remove your flash disk with the Batocera image on it, and again enter into your BIOS screen. So in my case, F2 in power button. And we'll then see under boot priority, the USB flash drive is gone, but we still need to make sure that under advanced mode, security, secure boot, we need to make sure secure boot control is enabled. And once you've done this, we can then exit out. Just remember to save configuration and reset. And this should then bring you back into your normal operating system. And here we go.